How long do you think it would take for someone to be able to achieve this goal? You're going to be looking at charges that maybe, 75, $150 an hour.
I would go from kind of the most rudimentary level that
Hmm.
pretty much everybody has access
Well, if
to.
you've
Like,
never taught before, you need to be really conservative with time. I want us to really kind of start thinking ecosystem around ourselves. And I think courses are one way to do that. Start getting your work into the hands of others, and also getting people to recognize you as an authority for some aspect of writing that they can turn to. Let's begin by deciding what we want our course to actually be about. And I thought, kind of, Matthias, I know you're doing a lot of like short film stuff. So something I thought would be
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
fun for us would be if we imagine doing like a poetry, combining something poetry and short film. How do you feel about that?
I mean, that's one of the no, not one. That's four of the projects that I have that I'm working on right now
Cool.
are poetry, are poetry short films, or they're
Okay.
specifically the short films that are written around poems.
I think when you're designing your course, one of the first things is firstly kind of deciding what your topic's going to be.
For
Okay.
sure.
And as you're deciding your topic, one of the things you also want to be considering too is what's the goal, the outcome. So, like, if someone takes this class, they want to leave with something tangible, something that they didn't have um, before the course started. So, if we were designing a course around poetry and short film, what do you think is a logical outcome that an attendee could expect to have?
You want to if I whenever I'm thinking about a project or if somebody hands me over their poem and they're saying they want me to storyboard it, the thing that the most basic thing that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to communicate the feeling behind the poem with visuals. So
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out the best way to maybe not even necessarily the words, right? Because I think
Mhm.
sometimes the words of the poem are, I don't say they're in the way, but I know we talk about it a lot because we talk about how, you might not walk away with a specific line from a poem, but you're going to walk away with a feeling. Like, how did this poem make you feel? And a lot of times, the best poetry videos are the ones that are communicating the feeling, and then you're going to let the words kind of color in it. So, yeah, how to communicate the feeling or the emotion behind your poem.
Okay. So right now, I have the goal as determine what visuals capture the emotion conveyed by a poem. Do you think that that is fair?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Um, I want to make sure whenever I'm thinking goals, I really want to make sure I'm trying to make it as concrete as possible. So I kind of some words here that I'd like to kind of hone in on a little bit. Um, Visuals. When we think visuals, what does that mean to you?
I mean, it's kind of a compilation of things, specifically shots, like what specific shots communicate the poem, and they could be
Mhm.
things that are of a set. They could be things that they could be like what is encompassed by your set, what's encompassed by your subject,
Mm.
and so and depending on what the poem entails or what the poem requires, it could be either.
Okay.
But yeah, the set and subject and scene, like what are communicated in those,
Okay. And I want to be as specific as possible.
for
How
sure.
many visuals can I expect if I take this workshop? And I know we're kind of working with your example as kind of more in your lane, so like
Okay.
kind of leaning on you to a degree. But let's imagine this was an actual thing that we were going to be doing. How many? I'm deciding whether I want to take this course or not.
Okay.
How many visuals or how many shots, sets, subject, whatever it is? How many can I expect to leave with by the end of this workshop?
It's kind of hard because I don't think that I ever go into like that's a creative decision, right? Maybe part of the course I would say is understanding your poem to understand what your poem would need
Hmm.
or what you think would be a good idea for your poem or how your poem could
Hmm.
communicate that. But I
Hmm.
would for sure say that that decision is a let's listen to your poem. Let's read your poem.
Mhm.
Let me hear you speak your poem. And what do you think your poem is asking for?
And I think the more specific you can get with that, the more also that the person who's going to sign up for the course, the clear the expectations are. You know, it's hard to sign up for a course, be like, I don't know what's going to happen in this course. This could be a wild thing. But like, if you have something, no, like I know exactly what I'm going to get out of this. What if the course was something like poetry? Like, what if what if it was called Poems in 3 acts? And then the goal
Mm,
was creating how to turn one poem into a 3 act short film.
there we go.
How do you feel about that?
I like that.
So our goal is we're going to turn a poem into a 3 act short film. There's some considerations that we want to consider for this. So what one thing I just mentioned is time. How long do you think it would take for someone to be able to achieve this goal? Not necessarily like to like an amazing necessarily standard, but at least to have enough like backbone to be like, okay, now I feel comfortable trying this on my own and things like that. How long do you think it would take?
Uh, it kind of depends on the level. I honestly I would go from kind of the most rudimentary level that
Mhm.
pretty much everybody has access to. Like how long would it take you to create this on your iPhone
Right.
when you get home,
I agree.
right? Um,
Aiming for beginners always gives you your biggest market.
yeah, no, yeah, absolutely.
You know,
And so I would say, and like not only iPhone, but I would also try to use what is iMovie. I think we could do if we did 3 courses, if we did 3 classes at an hour and 45 minutes each, I think it could
okay.
knock it out.
So this already is something that's going to be pretty involved, right? So you basically, if we're designing this actual course, we're expecting a kind of a relatively serious commitment. You know, this isn't something that you can just hop in for an hour and be done. You know,
Yeah.
um, so that's another thing you want to be considering with your courses. You want to be deciding what are you demanding of your attendees. Um, 3 2-hour sessions, cool. So you're looking for people that are really dedicated and really interested in this and getting started. Um, if that's something that you're nervous about finding people for, then we need to, you know, shrink the goal because the goal might be too ambitious for a shorter time period. So like if we were designing a course that was just say an hour, that's very different, right? So an hour,
Yeah.
maybe instead of like poems in 3 acts, maybe it's like how to make like an intro to turning a poem into one, maybe focusing on like a 1 act. Eh,
Yeah.
and emphasizing that this is an intro. We know we're not going to be able to go into all the nitty gritty.
We wanted to reduce it to something that's manageable for
Hmm.
somebody, then
Hmm.
storyboarding would probably be
Oh,
the
and
first
would you
case.
storyboard all 3 acts or just 1 act?
Storyboard all 3 acts.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
that's how
Okay.
you that's how you like. I mean, if you're storyboarding, then you have to storyboard with all 3 included.
Mhm. Okay. So I'm going to adjust this. I'm going to say how to storyboard a poem into a 3 act short film. I'm going to say it's a single 2 hour session, more or less. Okay. Um, by the way, you know, if you have a course that you've never taught before, this is going to be a tricky thing because you have no idea what the time's going to be. I always encourage people, if you've never taught before, you need to be really conservative with time. Things are going to move faster than you expect them. Okay, things are going to just you're not going to have time to do all the things you want to do. So we don't have to go crazy ambitious. And then once you actually teach it, then you can kind of get a better gauge for how things what's going to be faster, what's going to be slower. So this is the time component is really key. Also because if you have an idea of your time, you need to also kind of be thinking about the venue where you want to be hosting. And
Yeah,
venues, especially if you're doing paid events and things like that, like if this is something that you think you would charge for entry into, um, that's going to take away some venues, but it's also going to open up the door for others. Um, Venues are not cheap. It's common for a venue if you're looking for a space, like a meeting space, even for just like 5 to 10 people, at like maybe like a restaurant or um, like a co-working space or wherever it may be, you're going to be looking at charges that maybe, 75, $150 an hour. If you have connections, use those. Um, if you feel comfortable hosting people at your house, do that. But if you're looking outside for venues, um, this can get to be expensive,
Yeah.
very, very quickly. And we haven't even talked about materials you may need and things like that.